And a gracious Thursday night, everybody. McFiles, this and that part two tonight. We're grateful that you're with us on this Thursday night. And as the old saying goes, what would a Thursday night be without a little tech glitch or two with the McFiles? But we are back on, looks like. And everything seems to be going a little bit smoother now. So we're good to go. Hey, it's good to see everybody tonight. And we hope that you've had a wonderful week. Man, what a last 14 days in this country. Between the Rose decision and what the events that took place yesterday morning at 3:33 a.m. in the morning. Very interesting time frame on the Georgia Guidestones. I got some thoughts about that tonight. I'll run by you. But tonight we're going to be taking your questions. McFiles Forum at gmail.com. If you got a question, it can be on faith. It can be on the Guidestones, whatever you like. And if it's within reason and I can answer it, we'll do our best to discuss it with you. Take some comments from the chat tonight. And let me just say a couple of things. I want to just mention this briefly tonight, folks. You know, I know that there's been a lot of speculation on how this happened. And there was a GBI Twitter feed this morning. They've got a car that they've got pulling away from the Guidestones minutes after this explosion, or minutes before, I'm not sure which, but that video is on Twitter. I'm going to go ahead and show that right now. There's no sound to this, but I do want to show this to you, and then I'm going to come back with my thoughts about this, and we're going to take your questions tonight. We're not going to be all night on the Guidestones because there's some faith questions, but this is, let me retry this. There it is. I want you to watch this, folks. There it is right there. It's about a 20-second clip, 10 seconds, and they're going to replay it again. It's going to come up to you right here. Watch it again. Boom, right there. That's that back end, the backside. If you're looking at it from straight on, that's the parking lot. That's to the left. That was the English-speaking, English and Spanish translation of those Guidestones we talked about last night on the Faith Show, and then they tore it down today or yesterday, and so forth. And there's another video, but they had a car. This is the car that they had pulling off. Timestamp was 4:03, so 3:44. So the explosion happened at 3:33. So 10 minutes after the explosion, that car pulled away from there. And folks, that is, I will tell you this right now. I've been there, and there is absolutely, it's out in the middle of nowhere. It is out in the middle of nowhere. So that car to be there at 3:43 in the morning is not without coincidence. Now, that's the GBI's version. I know that there are those of you out there that you're not buying that, and that's okay if you don't buy it. But that's what they've got, and that's the video. It's my humble opinion, and you can disagree with this and telling me that it's lightning and natural causes and all that. I believe it was an explosion. I've talked to several people today about this and gotten their opinion about it, and I think there's a consensus that it's quite possible. We don't know any folks, and to be honest with you, for those of you that are claiming it's lightning and claiming it's this and that and the other, you don't know. You don't know. You wasn't there. Now, if you were there and saw it yourself, that's one thing. And look, there's enough people out there that can put a video together and show all sorts of things. That was the GBI. And yes, they can do the same thing, but there's the issue here is you got one or two ways to look at it. You can look at it as it was an act of God, which I still believe it was an act of God. I can believe that because that explosion was an act of God, and God took this stuff down. I give him the glory for it. I don't give any man glory for it, that's for sure. It was time for these stones to come down. These stones represent something more, though, than just granite. We talked about that last night. But the thing that's troubled me all day, and I've chewed on this, and I've ran it by people that know more about this stuff than I do. That explosion took place at 3:33. Officially, the timestamp that the officials gave you was 4 o'clock in the morning. Well, by 4 o'clock p.m. yesterday afternoon, those entire Guidestones were gone. They had been basically leveled for safety, quote-unquote, reasons. And this is just a thought. And again, I don't know this to be true. This is just an opinion, so please take it as such. You can believe what you want to believe, and Knock yourself out believing what you want to believe. It's all right, because I'm not going to lose no sleep over it either way. I mean, this is not ultimately, in the scheme of things, there's a lot more important issues tonight that's facing our nation than to figure out who did this. But there's evidence, and there's been conversations through the years that there was a time capsule underneath the grounds of this that had sensitive information. And it could have been even, there's no telling, there could have been a detonation device. We don't know. I mean, look, folks, we don't ultimately know. That looked like an explosion to me. That did not look like lightning. That looks like it came from the base up, not down. And that smoke going horizontal like that, that was an explosion. And it hit, again, on that English. It was interesting. It was intriguing that it was on the English stone. Is it possible that the powers that be, and I talked to Dr. Grays about this a little bit, because Dr. Grays, and he was out there earlier this year praying against this. There's been a lot of attention this past year on those Guidestones, increasing attention on those Guidestones. The heat has been on, and we know that it's a nefarious thing, and it's truly America's Stonehenge. It's what it was. And there are so many statues that are in this nation that are basically literally Baphomet statues, folks, basically worshiping Baal, worshiping Illuminati, Masonry, Freemasonry, all this stuff. And I know there's a lot of people that laugh at that and mock that, and that's fine. But in this case, it's not beyond the realm of possibility that the people that destroyed the Guidestones are the people that built it, because they didn't want that information, whatever that information was, and the heat that was coming on these stones. And there's been a lot of it, folks. There's been, look, when you got political candidates, Candace Taylor of Georgia was out there promising to tear them down if she got elected. Look, don't think that the people, the powers that be, they didn't hear this stuff, and they watch the Twitter handles, they watch the feeds, and they hear the stuff, and they're very attuned to what we're saying here tonight. I'm sure there's some of them listening to me, and there's some listening to Dr. Grays, and they're not dumb. They're not dumb people. But it's just my opinion that I think the heat was on these stones, and it's very possible that this was done by forces to hide and to get that information gone before it came to the surface. Because I think what was the true purpose behind those stones, and some plans maybe that were in the works to do some of this stuff, may have been destroyed. Now, that is my opinion. Does that lessen the fact that I don't believe God was in this? Absolutely not. Don't be foolish. And you don't have to preach your sermons to me and say, well, I'll have you know God. I know, folks, I know God was in this. It needed to come down. It's a good day for Georgia. It was a good day for the country that these things came down, whether it was an explosion, act of God, or whatever else, folks. I said it last night. Ultimately, it don't matter. What matters is they are down. But I'm just giving this to you. This is a this and that show tonight. I'm giving this to you to think about. Think about how quick that thing was leveled, and the type of machinery. And Mark pointed this out to me this morning. He's very, very on target about this. Look, to get that kind of machinery to move those stones weigh tons. You had to have high-level machinery in there to tear it down and to move those stones out and to clean that place off. And they had that in there within hours of this. And there's a lot of this that don't make sense. And again, I'm going to leave it be tonight. This is a Thursday night, this and that. You probably won't hear me mention it again on this show, other than the 10 Commandments of Evil sometimes that they have put out. But it's just a thought. It's just a thought. Please take it as such. And you can chew on it. Now, you can believe what you want to believe, what happened to it. And all your YouTube buddies that's got all those videos out there, you can share them out all you want to, and that's fine. Please don't send them to me. I've already seen enough to choke a mule today, honestly, that I've been sent by about 100 of you. But just saying. I'm sorry, I'm in a Thursday night mood again. I don't even have the Batman shirt on, but I'm in a Thursday night mood. But anyway, that's just my take on it. But again, folks, ultimately, it don't matter what happened. What does matter is they're gone. Now, if the GBI comes forth with a suspect and, they say what they want to say, I guess you have to believe what you want to believe too. Because I know a lot of you don't trust the GBI, and I'm not going to say I trust them totally. I'm not naive on this program. I think some people think sometimes I'm naive. I mean, listen to some of the comments. I mean, it's like, look, if I could involve a turnip truck, I get it. But that explains. I'm gonna run that back one more time. I'm gonna let you look at this one more time. There's the car that's leaving the scene. That was at 3:44. This is the explosion at 3:33. It's a very prophetic timestamp, honestly. 3:33, and I'll tell you why that's important, folks. That's a Mason number. These stones were built on 3/22, 1980. That is a Masonic number, and I don't live and die on gematria, but there were some interesting things that George W. Bush was born yesterday. He was a Skull and Bones president. He was him and John Kerry and his daddy both were big into the Skull and Bones. George H.W. Bush was huge, big Mason and part of this secret organization. But right there, and you can see it right there. It looks like it's at the base of that thing that just came down. So, but the point is that the timestamps are important, and that's from last night. I'm here, not on that stage. I'm here. But that's just a thought. But the quickness that they got this thing leveled right after it happened is just, it raises a lot of questions. Now, as I said, I'm going to leave this alone tonight. You got any questions about it? Tonight's your night to ask them, because I'm not dealing with this anymore after tonight. But I wanted to just run that by you. And anyway, and it is curious how they got that out of there. And anyway, and somebody's asking, well, do you think that what's coming down next? There was another explosion today, and let me see here if I can find it here. This was in where was this at? This was the Philippines, and let me see if I downloaded this on the computer. I think I did. This is very interesting right here, and I'm going to just pull this up for you too tonight, and I'm going to show you this. This is wild, folks. This all happened. This has all happened in the last like 48 to 72 hours. This is crazy stuff, folks. We are living in a world, and we're going to talk about Boris Johnson tonight too. He's gone as British Prime Minister. Here's the Love World Peace Twitter feed. God. I have no. This is not my Twitter feed. This is the Love World Peace Twitter feed. This happened in Vegan City, and this happened on 7/7. Today is an interesting day, July 7, 7722. The historic obelisk of Juan de Salcedo, founder of the Villa Fernandina in 1572, was struck by lightning today. That was today. Pieces of brick and mortar were scattered 15 to 20 MTSs away from the site. If you look at that, folks, it looks just like our Washington Monument. And I want to thank Cleo. She said this is the shape. It's an obelisk. Obelisk is the shape that the Washington Monument is styled after. Monument to the sun god, used in the same passage in Jeremiah 43:13, which in some versions of the Bible, the NASB, the New American Standard, says, I will also smash to pieces the obelisk of Helopius, which is in the land of Egypt, and the temples of the gods of Egypt he will burn with fire. Well, this was an obelisk in Vegan City. This is the Philippines, and it's not Egypt. It's not the true fulfillment of Jeremiah 43:13. But somebody asked what's next. That was next. That happened today. So this stuff is happening, folks. It's just, look, there's a shaking. There's a shaking in the heavens. And look, it's without a doubt stuff that makes you go, wow. And of course, Julia, nothing's happening by coincidence. It's absolutely not happening by coincidence. It's not. And folks, again, you can, look, I'm not sitting here trying to tell you what to believe about this and what not to believe. You can believe what you want to believe and think what you want to think. I just gave you my opinion about the Guidestones. And again, it's ultimately, it don't really matter how it happened. I'm just glad they're gone, and we'll see where it plays from here. But I do want to remind you, some of you were not with us last night on our Faith Network. Some of you were not with us on Wednesday night Bible study. But I want to say this to you tonight, folks. The tearing down of those stones does not end the evil that those stones represent. I think the Lord sent a message to the powers that want to perpetrate that evil. But I will tell you this right now: it did not take the evil out of the country. The country is just as evil today, when I woke up this morning, as it was before those stones went down. And I'm just telling you, it's the warfare is just going to get increasingly intense. I just think the Lord is sending. I think these things are happening to give His church a little heads up that if we'll get in line with Him, it's like I said last night, if we'll get in line with Him, He will fight our battles. But we got to stand against evil. These taking down of the evil, folks, is symbolic of what He wants His church to be doing in the spirit realm. We are to stand against evil. We're not to appease it, and we're not to shake hands with it, and we sure ain't supposed to be getting in bed with it. And we can rejoice over stones coming down, but what we need to be praying against is that evil that those stones represent to come down. And there is still a Masonic Baal system that is at war tonight in this nation, over this nation. The spirit of truth, the spirit of Antichrist are at war with each other, and they are going at war in the heavens, and they are fighting for the soul of your nation and my nation tonight. And it's global. It's not just a national thing. It's a global thing. And also, on that same front, we had Mr. Boris Johnson today just up and resign out of the blue, and he is gone. Now, I never liked Boris Johnson to begin with, but I wasn't a big fan, so I'm not really shedding any tears over it. But I do believe that Britain, and I read the Gateway Pundit article tonight, and there's already some fake conservatives that are trying to get to in his place, and the individual out there trying to push the Masons are nice people. Push that somewhere else, okay? You can take that somewhere else, my friend. You're in the wrong dojo trying to push Illuminati, Mason, and Freemasonry here. Wrong channel. You might need to go to a pro-Mason channel. We know the evil behind it, and I'm not even gonna address your comment. But we'll see you later. Have a good summer. But anyway, Boris Johnson's gone tonight, and folks, I'm going to tell you something. I believe, and there's a protest in Italy. They want their prime minister to go. There's a shaking, and that's my point in all this tonight. There's a shaking. There's a shaking going on in the heavens, and there's a shaking going on in the earth, and there is a powerful. I mean, I'm telling you, folks, this is travail. This is biblical, true, end time Bible, getting us ready for the rapture, getting us ready for the second coming of Jesus, getting us ready for the harvest, getting us ready for what is coming. And all I can tell you is grab your seats and grab your seatbelts. We ain't even halfway through the summer. And I think that it's just the beginning. It's just the beginning. And, I would just tell you this tonight. Again, folks, don't let these distractions get you off the fight, the real true spiritual warfare. Because there is a spiritual war going on again, continuing over this country. Please understand that tonight. I said this last night. I'll say it again. I'm going to go to your questions. Christians have a tendency to worship symbolism and not worship Christ. They don't look to Christ. They look to everything else. And there's going to be a lot of Christians that are rejoicing today, and they say, well, these Guidestones are down. Praise God. And they'll stop praying against the evil that these Guidestones represent. And I think sometimes that's what Satan wants. I think Satan does this stuff, and we get all caught up in the fact, well, these Guidestones are gone. Yay. And we don't realize, again, those were just granite, folks. Those were just stones. The thing they represented is spiritual. And the thing they represented was evil. And the 10 commandments of evil that we read to you last night, those things are evil. And they'll always be evil. And those are the things that we fight against and we war against. We war against principalities, powers. We don't war against stones. We don't war against those kind of things. We war against spiritual things. And that is what we need to keep our focus on tonight. That's all I'm trying to say to you tonight, folks. That's all I'm trying to say to you tonight. And anyway, all right. Now, I got some questions already in the chat room. Some of these are from last Tuesday night or this past Tuesday night. And we're going to take some. And Susan Laudemoser says, do you think the Guidestones being destroyed was symbolic of tearing down the old system and something new will rise up? Susan, what new are you talking about? Or a signal from the elites of something to come? Who knows, Susan? Who knows? I think that we get more caught up in what's... Look, Susan, our focus, and nothing... This is not taking an issue with you, what your question is. But that question in itself... You need to get your focus off of what's coming and what's old and what's new and what the elites are signaling and all that. Folks, our focus as children of God need to be on one thing, and that is the harvest. That is what the Holy Spirit is doing in the earth. I could really care less what they're tearing down and what they're bringing, Susan, because you know what? This world ain't my home. I'm just a passing through. My treasures are laid up somewhere beyond the blue. The angels beckon me from heaven's open door, and I can tell you right now, I can't feel at home in this world anymore. So I really could care less what they're trying to build on this earth and what they're tearing down and what they're building up. Because you know something? If the Lord has anything to do with it, I have got to basically tell you that I ain't going to be here. So I ain't going to worry about it. Now, do I think the elites are signaling something? They're always signaling something. And folks, I have to tell you right now, and folks, please, no links, no ministry names, none of this stuff, and sending people to other channels and sending people this and that. That's going to get you blocked. You know better. Listen to me tonight. We're taking questions now. But no. Are they signaling something? Who knows, Susan? I could care less what they're signaling. My focus ain't on the elites, and my focus ain't on those Guidestones. My focus is on Christ tonight. My focus is on that harvest. All righty. Lisa Ramos, there's a video. Yes, I just showed that, Lisa. There is a person coming and going. There is. And we'll have to wait and see what the GBI says. I think it was an explosion. I do. I personally think it was an explosion. I truly do. I truly do. Let's see here. Carol Smith says, can the Guidestones and similar monuments be portals or doorways or gates of hell? Carol, I'm not going to say for sure about that. Look, there are spiritual forces that were behind this thing. And look, I looked at this thing and it was literally a ritual. This thing was built in a way that it's evident that there was demonic worship and worship of the star, worship of the sun. There was evidence, some evidence, and I can't prove this, and nobody's been able to prove it yet. I still ain't seen any photos of it, but I was told by Sheila Holm that she has seen photos years ago of that top, and there was stains on it, which very possibly could have been blood. There could have been human sacrifice on that thing for all we know. I'm not saying there was, but look, I wouldn't doubt it. The depth of evil of this thing. Now, was it a portal to hell? You know, ultimately, all these things are, Carol. But, Carol, I'm going to tell you what's more serious tonight. It's the worship of the occult in general in this country. Look, this witchcraft and this occultism and this New Age humanism and these New Age practices and Satanism and things like that, all of those things open up portals of hell. And, Carol, I got to tell you tonight, our border tonight, I think it was Mark that said it a few months ago, and he was absolutely right. He said it over and over the last 3 years, 4 years he's been with me on this show. It's not just our border is being open to physical entities coming across it. But when you've got an open border like we've got tonight, Carol, it's an open door to spiritual entities. And those things are opening the portals of hell over this country. And there's a lot of things that are being opened over this country. So, again, it could be. But I will tell you this, it's going to be, that's opening more portals, Carol. I'm not worried about these monuments. Look, these monuments are stone. What they represent is evil. The evil behind them is what I'm concerned about, because that's a spiritual matter. That's a spiritual matter. And I'm going to say something tonight, folks. And again, some of you ain't going to like this. You could tear down every monument in this country. You can tear down every monument that you want to. Every stone, everything that's evil in this country, folks. Can I tell you something? It's not going to remove the evil. Because I'm going to tell you this. Evil don't rest in stone. You know where evil rests tonight, folks? Do you know where evil rests tonight? It rests in the hearts of men. It rests in the hearts of men. Do you realize that not one stone caused that man in Chicago, that young punk kid, to go out and shoot 6 people and actually shoot 8 people and injure nearly 30 on July 4th. There wasn't one stone that caused that kid to do that. You know what caused that kid to do that? A demon spirit. And that demon spirit didn't rest in some rock. It rested in his heart, folks. And that is where evil rests tonight. And you can destroy every monument. You can destroy everything that you think we can get out of this country. And you think, well, that's going to just make it, it's going to make our country better. No, it won't, folks. No, it won't. Because that evil that's in the hearts of men cannot be changed except one place. And that's through Christ and the cross. That is through Christ and the cross. That is through Christ and the cross. Let me say it again. The only place that the evilness of men's hearts can be changed is in Christ and the cross. And until men repent and come to Christ, this world's going to be evil. And the Bible tells us, folks, that is not going to happen. Not everybody's going to repent. This world is going to get more and more and more and more evil as we get closer to the coming of the Lord. And I'm going to tell you right now, it don't matter how many statues you tear down. It don't matter how many monuments you tear down. It don't matter what you do, what you don't do out there, folks. Only God can change the heart. Only God can change the hearts of men. That's where evil rests tonight. And Jesus himself said that. Because the Pharisees were trying to trap him. And they said, well, your disciples eat with unclean hands. And they eat with the sinners. And they eat this and they eat that. And they do this. And Jesus looked at them and he said, there's not one thing that goes inside a man that defiles a man. He said, what defiles a man is what comes out of a man's heart. And he listed a bunch of them. And folks, that's where evil rests tonight. So again, we get our attention, the devil gets our attention on statutes and monuments and things like this. And we don't understand that that's not where evil rests. Satan's power is in the hearts of men. And he's blinded men's minds and he's blinded men's souls tonight. That's the evil that we face in this world tonight. And I think McDonald will amen himself on this Thursday night. I think it's a pretty good statement. Thank you, Carol Smith. Carol, you got me in trouble with the Pope question Tuesday night, but thank you. Thank you. I appreciate you, my friend. It's a good question. It's a good question. Thank you. The Bible mentions the book of life, John, and the Lamb's book of life. Yes, they're the same thing. They are the same thing. They're not different. It's the same thing. It's just semantics, simply semantics. Grant Patillo says, can material wealth be a curse on a country? Well, if the country worships that material wealth, Grant, and they put their faith in material wealth and not God, of course it can be. It can be a curse on anybody. Look, there's nothing wrong with money, folks. Money's not evil. Money's not evil. But the love of money is. And, folks, it's funny. Have you ever seen families when somebody dies and see what money can do to a family? Have you noticed the families that just money tears tears into the heart of families over arguing about shekels and arguing over about property and arguing over about things that people own and don't own. I mean, seriously, have you seen that? Noticed that? I mean, I'm telling you, I have witnessed this up close, and that is a curse. Money can be a curse if it's honored and worshiped instead of worshiping God. And I can tell you something, folks. You can be dirt poor and have God in your heart, and you're in better shape than if you got $1 million in the bank tonight and you don't have God and you don't have Christ in your heart. A.W. Tozer said it best. It said it best. It's better for the church to be poor and be saved than to be rich and be lost. And Christ rebuked Laodicea because that church was rich and it said it had need of nothing. And he said, you are poor, miserable, blind, and naked. He praised Smyrna because Smyrna had nothing. They were a poverty-stricken church and they were persecuted and they were poverty-stricken. He said, but you're rich. But you're rich. You're rich. You're rich. And I want to say it again tonight. The money itself is not the issue, folks. It's the love of money. The love of money. And the reason that this nation is under a curse to a degree, because we've not allowed our wealth to bring us to God. We have not allowed our wealth to bring us to God. Folks, the rich man didn't die and go to heaven or hell because he was rich. Lazarus didn't die and go to heaven because he was poor. The rich man died and went to hell because he didn't allow his riches to bring him closer to God. He did not allow his riches to bring him into a relationship with God. Lazarus went to heaven because he did not allow his poverty to keep him from that relationship. So it really matters little how much money you got in the bank. And it matters little about how many shekels you got, how many cars you got, how many vacation homes you got. And I might as well go ahead and meddle just a little bit. Folks, I've never seen anybody in my life, honestly. Have you noticed most rich people that they're happy on the surface, but when you get to know them, they are miserable people? I mean this. I know that they put on this air about they're happy with this money and they're happy with all these things and they're happy with this material wealth. But you start getting to know these people and you start seeing them behind the scenes, they are miserable. If they don't have God with that money, if that money that they're having, if they don't use that money for good, and all they do is spend it on themselves and they're selfish with it, and that's all they do is build, 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 they're miserable. You know, my dad taught me something. My dad taught me something as I was a little boy in Sunday school. First anonym that I learned was joy. And Jesus, others, and you. Jesus, others, and you. When Jesus is first, others will be second, and you will be last. I want to say that again. When Jesus is first, others are second, and you is last. I want to say that one more time. Jesus first, others second, and you last. That's what joy means. That's what joy means, folks. That's what joy means. And folks, I'm going to tell you something. I've seen some poor people that are just as miserable. And I've seen some rich people that are just as miserable. It's all about God. It's all about who they have in their life. Jesus told that rich man, that rich young ruler, he said, go sell everything you got. The rich young ruler started weeping. He said, I can't do that. He said, I'm not going to do that. So he left Jesus. And Jesus, that's when he made the comment about it being easier for man to pass through eye of a needle in the kingdom. He wasn't rebuking the young rich ruler for his riches. What he was rebuking him for is that those riches consumed him and that riches owned him instead of God. And that's the issue tonight. Grant, I went a long way to answer your question. Can a nation's wealth be a curse? Anything can be a curse, Grant, if it's not used for God. If it's not used for God. Anyway, you ask about the toppling of the Guidestones having any ramifications for America. Well, Grant, I think when we got up this morning, it's pretty clear our nation is just as violent, just as wicked, and just as without God tonight, and in need of prayer, in need of intercession, just like this nation was yesterday before these stones went down. And you're talking about, will it be immediately positive or negative? I guess that we have to wait and see. It remains to be seen. I haven't seen anything to indicate. Look, Grant, most people in America are oblivious to these stones. There's those of us that were following this, we were very aware of it. But I've watched the news wires today. There's very little of it. There's a little bits and pieces of it. The Georgia media is getting a hold of it because it happened in their backyard. National media has been pretty quiet on this. So the country at large don't even know what those Guidestones are. But anyway. Anyway. All right, let me find another one here. We're going to go it's 9 o'clock. I started a little late, so I'll go about another 15, 20 minutes. Let's see here. Jason says, why is the number of gun violence and shootings when the government trying to take our guns away? Jason, that's a simple question. I mean, and you ask, do you think the government has something to do with this? There's no proof of that, Jason, but I think it's a given that it does seem like every time there's an act of violence, that they go after the guns, and they've been doing that for many, many decades. It's not something new. I mean, it ain't like they just started doing this stuff, but yeah, they always go after the guns. They do. Janice Warvack, your question about Revelation chapter 2, the promise of the morning star, we will get into that. I think that's the promise given to the one in Thyatira. The morning star is actually the brightest star of the morning, and that is for the overcomer, and that is a promise to the believer, and it speaks of what we will be in heaven. We will shine with the brightness of the morning star in the presence of Jesus, and it's a prophetic picture of what's going to be given to the overcomer in Revelation. We'll get to that. We're going to eventually. We're going to be on Thyatira for a while, Janice, but we will get to that promise, and we'll deal with that directly. We will get to that directly. Let's see here. Catherine Jimenez says, in regards to principalities, is there one on each state or nation, or are these principalities in control of all different types of evil? Catherine, that's a good question. I believe that there are principalities over nations for sure. Are they over states? I wouldn't doubt it. I think they're over areas of the country. I think that, again, when you're talking about nations, it's evident from Daniel 10 that kingdoms and empires of the past and the present and of the future will have a principality controlling it. The Antichrist himself, Catherine, will have a principality. I firmly believe it's the Prince of Grecia, the one that Daniel saw and recorded in Daniel chapter 10. And we're going to study that in detail very soon, somewhat soon. And this nation of America has a principality over it tonight. And I think there's two. I believe that there is both one of righteousness and one of evil. And the intercession of the saints. And I cannot explain why that is, Catherine, other than this just the way God's economy is set up. God's always done this like this. He puts the affairs of man in man's hands, but especially his people. And if his people intercede for their nation, then that principality of righteousness rules over nations. And leadership is important. We got a wicked regime tonight. And I can tell you that what's controlling this nation as a whole, not the whole nation, but as a whole, is a wicked principality, what's being done over it tonight. And a lot of that is where we've got to pray against that. And when we pray against that, that principality's power is reduced and diminished. And you say, well, how do you know that, McDonald? I'll tell you what, read Daniel 10. Read Daniel 10 and look at what Gabriel and Michael went through to take down that Prince of Persia, to put the Prince of Grecia in place. They had to wrestle that Prince of Persia down because that Prince of Persia didn't want to go. And folks, that's what Paul talked about. We wrestle with principalities, powers, spiritual wickedness in high places. That's what we do. That's our role as believers. We intercede and we wrestle with those principalities tonight. And let me tell you something, folks. I want to say this. It's not a game of cowboys and Indians. And I want to say something right now. I'll save it for another time. But there was a certain individual of high importance with this reawakening tour that went out there and said anybody that was attacking the leader of that reawakening tour was wrestling or doing some kind of weird thing. And she tried to liken that to the attacks on him as, that we don't forgive him, we wrestle with him. And she's likening that if you're attacking somebody, which nobody's ever attacked him, we've just addressed what he stands for and what he believes. And that's why the church gets itself in such a mess, because people twist these things and they turn this into a game of cowboys and Indians. I want to make it clear to you tonight, folks, this is not a game of cowboys and Indians. These powers are real. The powers of darkness are real. They're just as real as the power of God. They're not stronger than the power of God, but they're just as real as the power of God. Look, those magicians in Egypt were given power by Satan, and their rods turned to snakes just like Moses did. Moses' serpent was stronger. And there were certain plagues that they were not able to mimic in Exodus, but there were some that they were. And look, this witchcraft that's over this nation tonight, folks, look, there's no reason not to understand the fact that, hey, it's opened the door for these principalities and powers to rule this nation. And again, that's where the saints have to stand in, and the remnant has to take up a role of intercession against that. And that's what we wrestle against. We're not wrestling against people, folks. We're not wrestling against movements. We're not wrestling. It's such insanity to say something stupid like that. And this lady is from a area of the world that's got nothing but voodoo in it, and it sounded like a voodoo curse that she was trying to cast on people that was trying to just question certain things in this movement. That's the insanity and the foolishness of the church, or the so-called church. I'll just leave it like that. Look, the remnant, we have a role to play in this tonight. And our role is to wrestle against these demonic forces over this country. And I'm just going to say it again. It's not a game of cowboys and Indians, folks. Not a game of cowboys and Indians. Never has been and it never will be. And that's where we're up against. But Catherine, to answer your question, yeah, there's principalities. And I don't doubt they don't just control nations. I believe they control states. I do. I believe they control regions. They control regions of the world. But anyway. All right, Sheila D. Is Israel working on building the temple? I've heard the high priests were looking for a perfect red heifer. Sheila, that is correct, but they've been trying to build that temple, for 30 years. The issue is the Dome of the Rock. Where they want to build that temple is where the Muslims worship as well. And I firmly believe that the Antichrist is going to solve that problem. And that's why he's going to be accepted as our Messiah. Because when he comes on the scene after the rapture, let me say that again. I haven't meddled a lot tonight, so I need to meddle a little bit. When he comes on the scene, all you rapture haters, after the rapture, let me say that one more time. When he comes on the scene after the rapture of the church, I believe that is going to be one of the areas that he is going to have this political wisdom on how to solve that problem temporarily. He won't be doing it for Israel's benefit. They will think he's doing it for their benefit, but he's doing it to get them to believe he's their Messiah. And when they take it hook, line, bait, and sinker, then he will make a covenant of peace with them. And in the middle of the 7-year tribulation period, he's going to break that treaty. You can read this in Daniel 9, 24 through 28. And I just say this again to the individual that wanted to argue with me in 18 emails about whether that was past, present, or current. Well, it's not history. That's not happened. There's not been any covenants of peace made with Israel, as Daniel foretold. It's future. But he's going to break that covenant, Sheila, middle of the week, and that's when Israel will be fighting for her life for the rest of the tribulation. She's going to be fighting for her life all along, but it's going to be bad. But yes, to answer your question, they are trying to rebuild it. But the problem is they can't until they get that Dome of the Rock situation worked out, because that's where they want it built. But that's where the Muslims want their temple built too. And the Dome of the Rock sits right there tonight. And trust me, this is all working. Again, this is the Holy Spirit working these things orchestrating these things for the coming of the Lord. Coming of the Lord. Elaine Willard says, the book of Revelation speaks of martyrs under the throne of God. Is it speaking of tribulation saints? Or does it include saints who were martyred throughout history? Elaine, it speaks of the tribulation saints. It's a good question. It's not a bizarre question. It's a good question. The martyrs of history, Elaine, have already went to heaven, and they've received their crowns, I'm sure, or they will receive their crowns. There will be a special crown, I believe, for those that gave their life for Christ. I do. I believe that those that gave their heart. What John was seeing took place in the sixth seal, and we'll get to that. And that was sometime around the midpoint of the tribulation. And those souls came out of the tribulation. It's one of the raptures, actually, that will take place during that time. The church is just but one of 5 raptures that take place. You have the rapture of the saints right prior to the tribulation. You have the rapture of the 144,000 Jews at some point in the midpoint. You have the rapture of the 2 witnesses. They're going to lay in the streets for 3 days. You're going to hear that same voice that John heard in Revelation 4 saying, "Come up hither." They'll be taken up. And the rapture of the martyr saints. There's going to be saints that will get saved during the tribulation period, and they will be raptured into the heavens. They will be raptured into the heavens. And but what he saw were people, Elaine, that basically had been left behind, and they were going through the tribulation period, and they gave their heart, and probably likely were beheaded, because I think it even mentions that in that verse in Revelation 6, that these were those that were beheaded for their testimony. And there's only one religion that beheads their enemies, folks. The Catholics did it, and the Muslims did it through history. There was a lot of beheadings in the Catholic faith. There was a lot of beheadings in Islam, and there still are tonight. But this whore, this harlot that sits on this beast, and she's drunk with the blood of martyrs, Elaine, it's a mixture of all apostate religion. It's always persecuted the saints. It's always persecuted those that know Jesus. And it will be no different in the tribulation period, but it will be on a scale higher than maybe it is tonight, even during that time. It's not going to be a good time to be around. I sure don't plan on being here. But to answer your question, friend, it's tribulation saints. The martyrs of this time have already gone on. They're already in heaven and waiting the trump, just like we are. Just like we are. Jackie, this is a political question. She says, do you think Hillary will run, and could she actually win? Jackie, you gave me my comical moment tonight. Do I think she should run? Yeah, I think she should run all right. I'm not going to tell you where I think she's going to run to, but do I think she could win? Only in her wildest meth-induced hallucination. I tell you, folks, I don't know. I think the country is so sick of Biden right now. I think these Democrats, they're looking for anybody right now. Do you realize something? I got to show you this. I'll show you this tonight. Let me find it. I pulled this off of the website. This is crazy, folks. And let me tell you how people feel about this country. You want to know the spiritual part of this? Look at this figure. This is from CNN, folks. Now, when CNN tells you this, you're screwed. 88% of the country believes that the country's on the wrong track. Now, that ain't a Fox News poll. That ain't a Breitbart poll. That ain't a Gateway Pundit poll. That ain't a Just the News poll. That ain't the far right-wing website poll. That ain't even a McFiles poll, neighbor. That's CNN. That's today. 88% thinks the country's on the wrong track. Now, do I think Hillary Clinton would want to run and take over and try to get into the back door? Look, Hillary Clinton's so evil, folks. Who knows what she's going to try to do? But again, let her do it. I think it's disastrous. I don't think the country's going to want her no more now than they did in 2016. That's just my opinion. But we'll see. 88%. That's the CNN poll, folks. That's pretty bad. But thank you for the question there, Jack. I had to laugh a little bit about that one. You said, could she be appointed VP? Anybody can be appointed VP. Anybody can be. So, yeah, she could be. But anyway. Anyway. All right, one final question. It says, Crispin says, can you explain to me why so many churches believe in replacement theology? Well, Crispin, I'm going to answer that question because they're anti-Semitic and full of the devil. That's a simple answer. They're anti-Semitic and they're full of the devil. And Crispin, let me say this about that question tonight. That's why a lot of churches don't believe in the rapture. That's why a lot of churches don't believe in the rapture. Because to believe in a rapture, you have to believe in the plan of God for Israel. You have to believe that all Israel will be saved at some point. You have to believe that Israel is the focus of Bible prophecy and not the church. To believe in the rapture of the church, you have to believe that there's a 7-year tribulation period that God's going to use to bring Israel back to himself. And you have to believe that Israel will be at the forefront of the nations at the end of this 7-year period going into the millennium. You'll have to believe all that if you believe in a rapture. But because the church is anti-Semitic, Crispin, and because the church is full of the devil, many of these pastors are, they don't believe that. And that's why they try to replace Israel with the church. That is why they try to replace Israel with the church. And you can't replace Israel with the church, folks. Bible prophecy is not about the church. It's about Israel. It is about the restoration of the seed of Jacob. It is Jacob's trouble. It is called Daniel's 70th week that has been determined upon thy people. Daniel was a Jew. Daniel was not a Gentile. Jesus cried over Israel, Jerusalem. He didn't cry over, he said, Jerusalem, Jerusalem, thou that killest the prophets, I would have brought you to myself, but you wouldn't have none of that. Folks, that's the prayer of Jesus for his own people. He said, I will come in my Father's name. You won't receive me. There'll be one that comes in his own name. You're going to receive. He wasn't talking to the Gentiles there, folks. He was talking to the Jews. He was talking to Jerusalem. He was talking about the coming Antichrist. He was talking about the man of sin. All the prophetic scriptures, folks, in Matthew 24 have to do with the travail of Israel in these last days. And they're going to be saved in a day. I'm going to say something as I go out of here tonight. I'm going to wrap it up on this. I want to wrap it up on this. Folks, let me tell you this. I hear this often. And I hear, people say, well, God's going to fix all this for us and God's going to work it out and God wins in the end. He does win in the end, folks. He does. He wins in the end. But to understand that tonight, you got to understand this. You got to understand this. Before all this wraps up and before there is the coming of Jesus and Jesus comes in the clouds with the church. He comes for the church first and then with the church. And listen to me out there just for a few minutes and we'll wrap this up tonight. When he comes with the church, that is when Christ wins. That is when Christ wins. And that is when God wins. There's going to be untold bloodshed on this earth. There's nothing in the Bible that tells you that the next this time that we're in as we go forward is going to be rosy and peachy. There's nowhere that they're saying that tonight. There's nothing that's said in the Bible that paints that picture. You've got people out there on Christian podcasts claiming that there's a 1,000-year utopia coming and this age of Aquarius is on the way. Folks, that's nothing but right out of the pages of New Age humanism. And they're preparing the world for a New Age Antichrist. And they're preparing the world for this man of sin. They don't even realize they're doing it. When they're speaking that stuff, folks, they're speaking out of the spirit of Antichrist. They're not speaking out of anything else. They're speaking out of the spirit of Antichrist. There is no utopia coming, folks. There ain't going to be no age of Aquarius coming. There's going to be a time of trouble like this world has never seen in its past, in its future, and neither in its presence. It's coming. The only time this earth is going to experience true peace will be when Christ Jesus himself comes back in the clouds with the saints at the Battle of Armageddon, and he defeats the forces of Antichrist and ushers in that millennial kingdom. He will be in charge, and Israel will be at the forefront, at the forefront of the world, and the saints of God will be ruling and reigning with Christ during that 1,000 years. That's when the earth will experience peace. Because I will tell you this, there will be no war then. The nations, as Isaiah says, will beat their weapons into plowshares. The lion will lay down with the lamb. The serpent will lay down with the child. And folks, that is the only time. That is the only time that this earth will experience peace. And there has been a lot of positives happening. But folks, I'm going to tell you, all the positives that are happening is to get the church's attention. Not on the positives, but to get our attention and get us in that harvest field. Because, folks, all of this is prophetic. These Guidestones coming down was prophetic. It was very prophetic. The timestamp was prophetic. All of it was prophetic. But it's not for us to sit here and dwell on that. It's letting us know it's harvest time. And as Christ said, he said, pray that the Lord of the harvest will send laborers into the harvest, because the harvest is plenty, but the laborers are few. But the laborers are few tonight. The laborers are few. And folks, it's getting so late. I'm going to ask you a question as I leave tonight on this Thursday night. Do you have lost loved ones that are out in that field of sin tonight? Do you have lost loved ones that are outside the ark? Do you have lost loved ones tonight that you know about? And they don't have to be family members. They can be friends. They can be whoever. I will tell you right now, my friend, my neighbor, it's getting late. It's getting late. It's getting late. Everything that you've been seeing, everything that's going on, it's a rumble of thunder that it's getting late. It's getting late. And again, we need to realize that you can tear down every stone, every monument in America. It's not going to take the evil out of men's hearts. Only Christ can do that tonight. Only Christ can do that tonight. Only Christ can do that tonight. And that's the time that we're living in. It has been a wild, wild week, without a doubt. It's been a wild, wild 2 weeks. And there ain't no telling what's coming. All I can tell you is get your spiritual seatbelts on, hunker down, keep the faith, hold the line, and keep your focus above. Keep your focus above. Now, I'm going to let you have a break tomorrow night on Friday night. No McFiles tomorrow night. No McFiles Saturday night. We'll be back Sunday morning meeting time with you. We pray that you'll have a blessed weekend. And we love you guys. And thank you all for being with us tonight. We hope you've enjoyed the Q&A. The McFiles.org is the website. You can find our platforms at McFiles, themacfiles.org, and you can find our Telegram room there. And we ask you to just join us there and join our channel. Our Faith Network is back up. We'll be back on the regular Faith Network. And we'll also be back here Sunday morning, and so forth. But listen, we hope you join us then. Until then, I hope you had a good time tonight. Had a good time. Good questions tonight, as always. Thank you all for being with us tonight. And may God bless you. God bless your families. And God bless this great nation of America on this Thursday night. Until we see you again, Christopher McDonald out for this Thursday. And may God bless this great nation of America, folks. Pray for your country. Pray for your country. And I will see you when I see you. Have a good night, everybody, and be blessed. Until then, good night.
Josh fit the battle of Jericho, Jericho, Jericho. Josh fit the battle of Jericho, and the walls come tumbling down. Well, Josh fit the battle of Jericho, Jericho, Jericho. Josh fit the battle of Jericho, and the walls come tumbling down. Good morning, Sister Mary. Good morning, Brother John. Well, I want to stop and talk with you. Want to tell you how I come along. I know you've heard about Joshua. He was the son of Nun. He never stopped his work until his work was done. God knows that Josh fit the battle of Jericho, Jericho, Jericho. Josh fit the battle of Jericho, and the walls come tumbling down. You may talk about the men of Gideon, you may brag about your king of Saul, but there's none like good old Joshua at the battle of Jericho. Up to the walls of Jericho they march with spear in hand. Go blow them ram horns, Joshua cried, 'cause the battle's in my hand.
God knows that Joshua
fit the battle of Jericho, Jericho, Jericho. Josh fit the battle of Jericho, and the walls come tumbling down. You may talk about the men of Gideon, you may brag about your king of Saul, but there's none like good old Joshua at the battle of Jericho. Well, they tell me, great God, that Joshua's spear was well nigh 12 feet long, and upon his hip was a double-edged sword, and his mouth was a gospel horn. Yet bold and brave he stood, salvation in his hand. Go blow them ram horns, Joshua cried, 'cause the devil can't do you no harm.
God knows that
Josh fit the battle of Jericho, Jericho, Jericho. Josh fit the battle of Jericho, and the walls come tumbling down. Up to the walls of Jericho he marched with spear in hand. Go blow them ram horns, Joshua cried, 'cause the battle's in my hand. Then the lamb ram sheep horns begin to blow, the trumpets begin to sound. Old Joshua shouted, "Glory!" and the walls came tumbling down. Joshua fit the battle of Jericho, Jericho, Jericho. Josh fit the battle of Jericho, and the walls come